Good Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock, time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Day 2 of legal tampering in the NFL. Teams can talk to the free agents. They cannot finalize deals until the league year starts tomorrow at 4 o'clock. So late last night, the Browns got their defensive tackle that they had been looking for. They agreed to a 4-year, $57 million deal with Dalvin Tomlinson, $27.5 million of it guaranteed. He was a second-round pick of the Giants in 2017. Take a look at the scouting reports. What it tells you is Tomlinson is a run stopper, has never missed more than 5 tackles in a season, 55 tackles for loss or no gain since entering the league, and has posted a run defense grade of 83 since 2017. PFF had Tomlinson ranked as the 3rd best interior defensive lineman in free agency behind Hargrave and Daron Payne, who both signed for significantly more. Based on some of the hefty contracts of the big men, Browns got pretty good bang for their buck with Dalvin Tomlinson. Let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, they got value with both of them, a little bit less than I thought both of their 2 defensive lineman signings would cost them.
Well, first things first, when you look at it with Tomlinson, obviously, and now this is the entirety of his career since 2017. So obviously he's been a plus run defender his entire career. With Payne, with Hargrave, we're talking about guys that were both in the double-digit sack total last year. Certainly that's not necessarily Tomlinson's game, but that might be what's even more appealing to the Cleveland Browns. As we all know, the run defense last year from the interior defensive line was, atrocious is probably putting it mildly. So you go out and basically you find the best guy, in your opinion, to do just that. And he has a history of it. He's a kind of guy where he gets his hands on you, it's over. You know what I'm saying? He's not going to let running backs run through him. This was a very, very crucial signing because now you basically have your number 1 guy in the room. And, we were last year, we weren't sure who number 2 was. We weren't sure who number 3 was. I mean, you were trying to say, Taven Bryan's played, the best of them. But just because you're the least rotten apple of the rotten apples doesn't necessarily mean you're a good thing. It was the money was probably the key here. Essentially, you look at that deal, it's essentially a 2-year deal, the way it works out. So you're getting Dalvin Tomlinson for year 28, age 28 season, age 29 season. Comes from the SEC. He's had success with the Giants, played a lot of 1-tech for them. Minnesota played some more 3-tech. So he can kind of do either role. And the other thing for the Browns, and one thing we've talked about, Dave, is, their guys on the interior, they never have drafted anybody on the interior with any heft. All of these guys have been 305 or less. Tomlinson comes in 325 right off the bat coming in. Biggest guy they've acquired to play defensive tackle in the time they've been here. He brought in players in the past like Malik Jackson, Malik McDowell. These guys were both undersized defensive tackles themselves. You got the guy you needed here. I know there's a lot of talk about the linebackers and what's going to happen there. I think they like the linebackers they have. They just never really had the correct defensive tackles to put in front of them. But this is one step in the right direction of getting that corrected.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I like the signing. And some people were upset that Draymond Jones ended up going to the Seahawks because they front-loaded his deal. I think this fits a little bit better and a little more with what they need. Let's take a look at the grading of Day 1 free agency, CBS Sports. They grade the Browns with a B based on Okonkwo and Dalvin Tomlinson re-signing Ethan Posick. And I would agree with that. And again, I know some of the fans are upset that there weren't bigger named guys, but I don't think they needed the bigger name guys, Jeff. I think they looked for specific skill sets and scheme fits. They're going to play that wide 9. How do these guys fit into that wide 9 technique?
For Okonkwo, this should be a really, really solid matchup. And I know a lot of people, they're starting the end. He's coming in. Look how cheap he got him. I think the Browns' ideal plan is that maybe he doesn't even start. I think they would like Alex Wright to continue the growth path he's on. Certainly much bigger at 6'5", north of 260 than Okonkwo was. But Okonkwo, from week 7 on last year in the 2022 season, when he was, given the starting job down in Houston, he was the 6th overall rated edge player, in the NFL according to PFF. So, you get a player like that. Was an All-American, was a Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year formerly at Oklahoma. 6'2", 250, kind of an oddball size-wise. He's not really as, tall as ideally as you would like playing the edge position, which probably led to him getting drafted in the 5th round. And he ran a 40 in the 4.7s. So you got to work your way through the NFL. Got himself to a great spot, obviously, with the Los Angeles Rams to begin his career. Found a way, to piggyback off Von Miller for some success, get into a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl last year. And I think for me, this is kind of what's really impressive. With Houston last year, everybody kind of knew the situation. Here was a team that was just absolutely tanking, with eyes towards getting the number 1 overall pick. And here was a guy, Okoronkwo, who basically, I'm playing for a multi-year contract. I want guaranteed money. So he had to go out in a situation that wasn't the best situation to succeed. And he certainly did just that. We talk all the time about, what Myles Garrett can do for other guys as far as, opening up opportunities. Okoronkwo's certainly been able to piggyback off players in the past. And for the wide 9 at his size, at his ability to, not just use one pass rush move, his ability to counter rush move if he needs to, he's going to be a solid fit for this team. And the Browns, look, it's been a lot of young guys that they brought in on the D-line. And, we have mentioned this before. You've got to self-scout yourself after a while, like what's working, what's not working. Their ability to either evaluate rookies and draft them or develop them, it has not worked to this point. So, their hand was kind of, forced that they had to go out and basically find guys that have proven in this league, because they can't just keep having these same situations come up and especially, which would be now year 4 of the way this regime is. And the other thing is, we're going to bring in a guy like Jim Schwartz to be your defensive coordinator, who's always been a huge proponent of building his defense from the front to the back and not get him some established, I don't want to say star power, but established solid guys in the league who have proven themselves. And the first 2 they've gotten off the bat so far certainly should help a Jim Schwartz defense.
Does Tomlinson fit into that scheme as well? I mean, in this, with the 2 ends that you have, and you can throw right in there, if your defensive tackles win one-on-one battles, they're going to get some sacks.
Well, that's another thing that Myles Garrett's going to do for you as well. Obviously, if he's going to push the quarterback up in the pocket, your bigger guys are there. But I think the biggest thing for Tomlinson is the versatility between the 1 technique and the 3 technique. They can now go out and bring in somebody else. It also works on how he pairs with whoever is currently on the roster and how they remain. But I think the fact that, you look at Tomlinson and maybe, not the overall star power of a Fletcher Cox or, certainly, players had in the past like Ndamukong Suh who have excelled more in pass rush. They needed somebody that could essentially get this team to 2nd and long and 3rd and long. And Dalvin Tomlinson should be that guy. Would they give him opportunities to rush the passer? Yes. But, and Alex Wright could also kick inside. Myles Garrett can also kick inside. You have Okoronkwo. You have Isaiah Thomas. So we're more than positive another edge is going to be brought in, whether it's through free agency in the draft. Just giving yourself options. Jim Schwartz likes to go 7, 8, 9 deep at the defensive line position, likes to rotate his guys in and out. They just didn't have the bodies when he took the job. Now you're starting to get closer and maybe seeing it all come to fruition. And, Jim Schwartz kind of getting something that should, work with what his vision is for defense.
All right, let's take a look at cap space remaining. This is from Over the Cap, the website. After the Watson restructuring, the Browns still have about $20.5 million in cap space. And again, they've only restructured Deshaun Watson's deal. It's 8th most cap space in the NFL. You see the teams that are atop of them have more cap space, but they have the 8th most, just ahead of the Lions. So the question becomes, Jeff, where do you want to spend Jimmy Haslam's money next? What is the next area that you would like to see them go out and address?
I think you need to continue on the defensive line. Just because you got one edge, just because you got one defensive tackle doesn't mean you're done in either of those areas. And this is where the Browns are great. The Browns are, and they've always, kind of been, productive on day one, not so much last year, but other years they've been productive on day one. This is where you kind of value values. And I think this is where the Browns have always been really good with this, and why maybe a Draymond Jones contract or even a Jesse Bates where you're giving away $24 million. Well, that's great. If you have $80 million in cap space, that's great. But if you don't, that's 1 or 2 guys. I mean, who else are you bringing in if you're willing to commit that much money? I think safety is the one you got to talk about here. I think we're all pretty positive on the player like Grant Delpit is. You need to get more in here in that secondary. Whether you look at a player like Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who plays the slot as well, which for me, love the player. I just think it creates more problems because then the Browns maybe got to look into the possibility of whether or not they're going to move on from another corner on their roster. I think they're just personally going to let this work out. And, hey, somebody's going to end up playing nickel. And look, you're all getting paid at the end of the day. So we all might not like the jobs we're given, but we all do appreciate it, basically when the revenue shows up in the bank account. But safety has got to be a spot you got to go here. I think, you could ask Grant Dilpin to play some free safety. We all have seen what he's done as a strong safety. I think, there's a lot of hybrid safeties in the NFL these days. There's guys who excel around the line of scrimmage. There's guys who can play some single high, two high. You've got to find another guy to match with Grant Dilpin to go ahead and get that done.
All right, before we go to break, we're going to look at a tweet you put out. I'm guessing this is the guy you like for safety. Juan Thornhill played for the Chiefs, figures to be affordable, if you will, not as high priced as some of the guys. What do you like about Thornhill?
Juan Thornhill, and I've loved Juan Thornhill ever since he went through the draft process coming out of University of Virginia. And first things first, University of Virginia, you need to get into the University of Virginia before they start talking about giving you a football scholarship. So the overall player intelligence is there with a young man like Juan. But he's one guy that can play up around the line of scrimmage. He can play some nickel if you need him to. He can play true traditional free safety if you need him to. The other thing is you want to start bringing in guys here that are used to winning. They're used to playing extended seasons. Guys that, if there's a 2-game losing streak in October, like, well, this isn't the way, man. This is not how this works. If our overall goal is to play late into January and into February, you've got to be right in September. You got to be right in October. You got to be right in November. You got to be right in December. And so taking guys that, and Juan Thornhill's played in 3 Super Bowls. I mean, that is a guy with a serious pedigree. So players like that come into your locker room. Other players should be listening what's going on. He has 2 Super Bowl rings. There ain't nobody else in that locker room that can do that. I just always really appreciated the game, the work ethic, the attention to detail from a player like Juan Thornhill. I think it will work out really, really well. We're going to have to see the way this safety market plays out. It's been slow moving to this point. I know the Browns are active and are willing to be active in this market. So a guy like Juan Thornhill, in my opinion, fits what they need in the rest of that secondary and certainly probably fares well for what Jim Schwartz is looking for.
Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little wide receiver, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greenie Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop Live Theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at greeniesportscards.com.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason for the first time in the show.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. Just wanted to touch base on Browns having people at Odell's workout. Between Odell and Josh Gordon, there's a big difference. Josh Gordon worked his way out. Odell didn't want to play with Baker Mayfield, period. It's just ludicrous. But anyways, I would welcome him back in a heartbeat at the right price. Not no $20 million a year, but, prove yourself deal. Hey, well, let's take him back. Well, it can't hurt that bad. The locker room loved him. He's not a cancer in there. And he might be a bit of a diva, but what NFL player is it nowadays? So what do you think about that, Dave? Love you, brother, as always, and be good and be safe.
Appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, the locker room doesn't seem to have a problem with Odell. I don't know. If it was the right deal financially, maybe, but I still hesitate. I don't know that he'd be happy here. He wasn't happy with Jarvis Landry here.
Well, first things first is, when we all say if the money was right, so obviously we think for the money to be in the Browns' favor. What has kind of always been Odell Beckham Jr.'s sticking point has been the money. So, you got to think Odell is going to probably chase the highest offer. Once Odell got away from this team, what did we see? We saw a player like Donovan Peoples-Jones grow and, take the opportunities given to him and become better. You bring back in Odell Beckham, Who's going to be the one to tell him? Well, most likely there might be more targets for Donovan Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper than you. Odell, it's just the way he is. It's just the way he's wired. It's just the way he's driven. Odell, wherever he goes, he's going to feel that I am the number one wide receiver. I deserve the most targets, and probably not be truly satisfied unless he gets those. For me, look, I loved Odell Beckham Jr. when he was coming out of LSU. Absolutely infatuated with the player, the overall talent he is. But, you saw what happened with New York. You saw what happened with Cleveland. Obviously, the Rams, it seemed to go pretty well, but it was a short tenure there, obviously. Me, it's just not a road I would go back down. It really is. And the other thing is, the Browns have 4 or 5 young receivers here, and they're going to give an opportunity for 1 or 2 of these guys to maybe find a niche for themselves. You bring in Odell, I'm not sure that opportunity is necessarily there. I also believe, yes, maybe the Browns went to the workout and all of that stuff. But I do have to believe, and, was he truly upset with just, Baker Mayfield? Because even when his dad put out that video, it also maybe kind of looked like he was upset with the play calling. I just think it's something this team does not need to entertain it anyway.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you, and I don't think he's a bad guy even a little bit. So,
and I still think there's a ton of talent there. It's just so close to being a flammable situation. The Browns cannot afford to have this happen to them 2 out of 3 years. And then here's another season we talk about going down the wrong road because, things didn't work out with Odell Beckham Jr.
Let's take a look at this. So Adam Schefter is tweeting that the Jets are closing in on a deal with Allen Lazard, wide receiver with the Packers, played with Aaron Rodgers. They're also expected to negotiate and try to land Randall Cobb. If they do those 2 things, if they do one of those things, let's connect the dots. That means one of the young wide receivers from the Jets, Elijah Moore, would be available. And Mary Kay Cabot has connected the dots and says that the Browns are, in fact, monitoring Elijah Moore. They tried to acquire him at the trade deadline last year, couldn't get it done. I'm intrigued by this, Jeff, without question. Moore is a guy that's got a lot of talent that did not get a lot of targets, was underutilized with the Jets. And if, Aaron Rodgers ends up in New York and wants his guys, Elijah Moore could be there for the trading.
Well, first things first, with Aaron Rodgers, this kind of goes, back to the old high school movie down in Virginia, with Denzel Washington, when they came in, the defensive guys, we got our own people. Aaron Rodgers, he has his own people. Why he wouldn't, maybe he would want to work with Elijah Moore, but for Elijah Moore, you're basically dwarfing a young man again now. Look, last year was terrible. Jets played, 275 quarterbacks. Garrett Wilson was the only one that truly was, the constant in the passing game last year. Elijah Moore, Browns could have satisfied this, a couple of years ago just by drafting him themselves. Solid player, great between the hashes. He does have great speed. He can get deep. He's a 4.3 guy. I think the biggest thing with Elijah Moore, and everybody wants to talk about the Browns getting, a fast guy. Well, instead of always, worried about challenging 100 yards, how about 52 yards wide? And a guy like Elijah Moore totally can do that. Look, Mary Kay, she's kind of like a dog with a bone on this one. She does not want to seem to let this go. Other outlets, maybe whether it's in New York, they keep trying to downplay it like it's not much of a possibility. Mary Kay's not pulling this out of anywhere. Obviously, there's got to be, a little smoke to a possible fire here. And until we hear otherwise, look, if it's possible, and if 42 could get it done, because I doubt 90, some fans, you can get it for a day 3 pick. I'm not sure if a day 3 pick is going to get it done. But of course, if you had asked me if Darren Waller was going to go for pick 100 in this draft, I probably would have laughed at you there too. But if you can get your hands on Elijah Moore here, some of the young kids I spoke about earlier, maybe I'm not holding the place for him anymore. I think I got a guy who's truly, truly special. And the thing is, as the years go on, this is a guy that can be your 1 or your 2, the way the rest of that room shakes out going in the years forward.
All right, along those same lines, let's take a look. Dan Graziano tweets this out. The Broncos could move one of their wide receivers. Now you're talking about Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, KJ Hamler. Sutton doesn't have the speed. Jeudy and Hamler do. Both of them are intriguing young guys. But again, if you can get Jeudy or Hamler, those are guys that, again, fill a need. And I wouldn't put it past Andrew Berry to try to do that via trade.
Well, first things first, I don't believe Jerry Jeudy is available. If Jerry Jeudy is available, absolutely, you were taking that phone call. You were making that phone call. As the year, got worse and worse for Denver last year, the only bright spot towards the end of the year was really Jerry Jeudy. He was a guy that, at times, people were a little concerned, that he wasn't going to maybe live, up to, where he was drafted. It certainly looked like he was going to be as the year closed out. If he's available, sure. Cortland Sutton, $12 million a year. No, thank you. KJ Hamler. Yes, there's been some nice moments with KJ Hamler, but now you're getting closer to more money to KJ Hamler, where you have these guys already in the fold who are a lot cheaper, and you have 4 or 5 of them. If it's Jerry Jeudy, yeah, I'm interested. Otherwise, and the other thing is, with all that's going on in Denver, and, are they trying to get Russell Wilson figured out and Russell Wilson back on the right path? Because taking away his wide receivers doesn't seem the best avenue to go to for me. But, yeah, Jerry Jeudy, yeah, there's a lot of appeal there.
All right, before we go to break, this is from FanDuel. 3 most likely landing spots for Paris Campbell. Number 1, the Colts, which is where he was. Number 2, the Bears. Number 3, the Browns. Wide receiver room, non-existent outside of Cooper and Donovan Peoples-Jones. No reason that they shouldn't pursue Campbell. Top of that, a good fit for the Browns, wide receiver 3 spot. Deal makes sense due to the pass catcher's history. He's from Akron. You see those. And the other thing I would say, it's a little bit different skill set than David Bell gives you as well. So there are a number of reasons. It's going to depend on what the dollar figure is. And you hear it's not, the initial projections were it wasn't a ton. At that $5 to $7 million range, I'm real interested in Paris Campbell.
Certainly different from David Bell. David Bell, more traditional wide receiver. Paris Campbell, more modern day athlete who is labeled a wide receiver. Jet sweeps, things of that nature, and obviously all the the fakes and everything you can do off of that, and just having defense's attention on him. Put together a nice season last year, and obviously difficult surroundings as they were basically playing different quarterbacks every week. Had a head coach in Jeff Saturday. The whole weird situation that it was, but played the best NFL football of his life. Slow start for the wide receiver market. And I think, again, it's because of, everybody's always excited about the wide receiver market when there's actually a big wide receiver market. This year, that's not the case. So, the numbers that were originally floated out seemed a little ballooned. And, you don't pay top dollar for steak if you're not getting top dollar steak. And that's kind of the deal with this wide receiver class. And it's kind of got to be the same thing, that goes into the draft. It's just a down year all around for wide receivers. It is what it is, I guess. You just have to, take the punches with that. But it would be interesting to bring him in the fold, to bring him back home. But in the same respect, a guy like Paris Campbell, who's had injury history, maybe going back and playing in the Northeast, and, God forbid he got hurt, and now you're disappointing hometown fans. Maybe there's something that appeals. Maybe, another dome, another, a warmer weather climate could be something that appeals to Paris Campbell. The Browns definitely have interest in wide receivers. The question is it a certain particular interest? Because I know they're not giving up yet on David Bell, and I think they need to add a little bit more to that room where a possession guy like David Bell can make a little bit more of a difference. And the other thing with Campbell is, as great as the things that he can give you, the other intangibles from being a true natural wide receiver, you do need somebody that can go out there and be a true natural wide receiver to go along with this group. So it's a tough one, but again, like you're saying, $5-6 million. You look at the production last year was like 60 for 75 touchdowns. Yeah, that would warrant the money.
Jeff Lloyd from the Lockdown Browns podcast and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason and take a look at some of the available free agents still out there. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I don't understand why people are getting upset with Andrew Berry about him, not making these moves when we know that he's making these moves behind the scenes. But unfortunately, we don't have the budget. We went all in on Deshaun Watson, and that's what happens when you go all in on your franchise quarterback. Unfortunately, like let's ask the Chiefs. Let's ask anybody else who's probably dealing with this. Like, we don't have the money to really be flexible, and we have to adapt just like how the Chiefs adapted. We have to adapt. We have to make football players, and we have to turn those football players into a football team. This is a team sport. This isn't an individual sport where we just need one player. No, we need to mold this team, no matter who's on this team. And I think we have a coach that's doing that, and that's going to do that, which is in Jim Schwartz, Kevin Stefanski. But we have to be patient. Jim Schwartz has turned a lot of teams around, and this defense is going to turn around. I guarantee that. It's going to turn around, and so is the offense.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Jeff, I think there's, you heard the big names. You heard Hargrave. You heard a couple of the other big names. And I guess it's human nature. You want the big name, but I think the Browns went out and Andrew Berry did a pretty good job of addressing guys that fit what that defensive line needs. Your thoughts on that?
Well, first things first, is it about big name or is it about big contracts? Because you look at the teams that handed out a lot of money yesterday. Chicago Bears, terrible franchise last year. Atlanta Falcons, terrible franchise last year. Denver Broncos, terrible franchise last year. So some of this stuff coincides. The teams that can spend a boatload of money are the teams that probably weren't too good. The Chiefs obviously are not, they are now a nickel and dime team. That's the way they operate. Maybe they can, bring in one big player per year. The fact that the Browns have already brought in Tomlinson, it's going to be 12, for basically what contract is worth, 2 years, 12 per. Maybe you can get a second guy in, and I don't even know if they're going to get a second guy in north of $10 million. It doesn't necessarily mean anything, though. It's getting the right guys in. It's getting the right cohesion. And we thought we had this recipe going into, this past season in 2022. We all thought the strength of this team early on when Deshaun Watson wasn't playing for it was going to be the defense. It didn't work out. Some of that can be blamed on coaching, obviously, certainly. Some of that can be blamed on the coordinator. Some of that can be blamed on the players that were drafted by the front office and put in the hands of coaches to develop. They haven't developed a defensive tackle yet to this point. That hurts when you drafted one in 3 years, and none of them most likely are going to be a starter here. You're talking Jordan Elliott, year 4, won't be a starter. Tommy Togiai, year 3, won't be a starter. Maybe Perion Winfrey at some point could start in year 2. But if you don't get the right players in here and you don't have the right chemistry or the right recipe to develop them, it certainly looks bad. But to their credit, they've basically admitted that they were having an issue with that. And you went out and got one of the best in the game yesterday, So, you got, everybody wants to always criticize, but when somebody tries to go to do something to correct some of the flaws that they may have had, yet again, we'll find a way to open up, for criticism. And the Browns still have a ton of money if they want it. They can create a ton of money. They can create another $25, $30 million if they want to. You can restructure Garrett, Antonio, Wyatt Teller, Nick Chubb, all these guys, Amari Cooper, all that money can, be had and, turned in. I think the thing is, if and when they need it, they will absolutely do just that. But until then, they'll just kind of sit and wait it out.
So when you look at who's still available in free agency that's out there for Andrew Berry, what would you consider a home run? If Andrew Berry can sign this guy or this guy and this guy, it will have been a successful free agency.
I'm going to continue the path here. Obviously, what I've talked about Juan Thornhill, but I'll give you one on the offensive side, McCole Hardman. And it's the same type of reasoning. Good teams that have long playoff runs can't normally keep their players. Why? Because they normally have a really good quarterback who eats up a lot of money. And even though these guys are role players on teams, they become guys that can be viewed as, well, can I give him a bigger role on my team? I know everybody likes Paris Campbell, and obviously The fact that he was a former Buckeye certainly, leads to that. Mecole Hardman's just a faster guy. Everybody wants the deep speed, wants the overall game-breaking speed onto this offense. Well, a guy like Mecole Hardman can bring that to you. It's going to cost you a little bit, sure. But again, now here's a guy that's proven 2 Super Bowl rings. He's played in a ton of playoff games. You want these type of people in your building. So you go out and you can maybe, get those 2 guys from the Chiefs. You pair him, obviously, with Thornhill. You're bringing your son in here because they have the experience and they have what they feel are legit expectations. My season isn't 17 games long. I'm used to playing 20 games. I would walk into the building at the end of July. We don't expect to leave the building till the middle of February. These are the type of personalities you want in this room.
Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
No problem at all. Thanks for having me, Dave. Everybody have a great day.
Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, always insightful. Make sure you check him out. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns. Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Day 2 of legal tampering with NFL free agency. Tomorrow, the new league year starts at 4 o'clock. Some of these deals can become official. ESPN has graded them, and let's take a look at how they grade the Browns' 2 big signings. Defensive tackle Dalvin Tomlinson, 4 years, $57 million, $27.5 guaranteed. You see, they graded a C+, finishing 29th EPA per designed run allowed. The Browns needed run stoppers. Tomlinson's 33% run stop win rate, 32nd out of 68 qualifying defensive tackles, better than anyone the Browns had by a lot. 7% pass rush win rate, ranked 34th among defensive tackles as well. Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily. Casey, I like the signing. That's a guy I liked from the get-go. A big guy, absorbs double teams. Which is something the Browns did not have on that roster.
Yeah, that's the thing that sticks out first is that size. 6'3", 325, and I'd say that's on a light day. If I had to be real, I think that it's probably closer to 350. But yeah, he's a gap eater. He's someone the offensive line has to account for. Not going to see a lot of one-on-ones, going to change the numbers game. And he's not a high sack guy. He's going to get you maybe 2 to 3, but he's a pocket collapser. And with what they do off the edge with Myles Garrett, having someone who can push that pocket, make that noose just a little tighter for the quarterback, it's exactly what this team needed.
Yeah, I like the fit a lot. The other thing I would say, he's going to get a couple of sacks because the guys off the edge are going to chase quarterbacks right into that middle. And talking about the guys off the edge, Okoronkwo has been, I mean, he's a guy that's ascending. So let's take a look at this. They grade this one an A, 3 years, $22 million, 12.5 guaranteed. And nationally, ESPN feels could break out later in his career the way Shaq Barrett did for the Bucs in 2029. Not promising anything like 19.5 sacks, but he's a guy that wins in the run game as well. He's a young, ascending player that you line up opposite Myles Garrett and say, all right, guys, go get him from the wide nine. Again, I like the signing a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to stick to calling him Big O until I get that last name down. But I do like the comparison to Shaq Barrett there. I think that's apropos. He had great pressure rate last year with Houston. He's tenacious. If you watch him on tape, he just gets after it. You're not going to have to worry about effort. And that's what this team needed. You needed someone else opposite of Myles who could supply that pressure. And I think it was another case of skill set over big name. What he does well is exactly what this team needed. It didn't need to be the big splashy name play. They went and got the guy that can get the job done.
Yeah, and you mentioned the effort and the high motor. A lot of times that's contagious among a defensive line. So let's see how that plays out as well. This is really interesting. This next-gen stats. Pressure rates, top 5. And when you take a look at it, Okoronkwo is right ahead of Myles Garrett. So the Browns now have two of the top 4 ahead of Nick Bosa, behind just Trey Hendrickson and Micah Parsons are now the Browns' bookend defensive ends. Again, you like that. The wide 9, that's going to even make it a little bit more of a pressure-packed situation for opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah, and I think the key is, with Schwartz, he likes to rotate his line in and out. So he's not going to see a crazy amount of snaps, but there's definitely going to be an uptick from what he saw in Houston. Can he keep that pressure rate up with the increase of snaps? That's what's going to be the telling thing, because it's not going to be just a reserve role now. He's going to have more of a front and center deal. And I do expect him and Wright to kind of piecemeal that side of the line opposite of Myles. But, it's on third and longs, obvious passing downs. Expect to see Big O in the field and turning the heat up on quarterbacks.
It looks in the early part of free agency like the defensive line market is kind of this year's version of the wide receivers a season ago. The contracts were a little bit higher. I have been a proponent, and I've said a number of times on this show, I want to see 3 or 4 guys, not 2 at the higher price, because you need the numbers. And it seems like Andrew Berry and the front office kind of agrees. They need numbers up front. So there's going to be another one, I would imagine.
Yeah, they got to get someone to pair with Dalvin. I'm just ecstatic, though, because we've been screaming from the rooftops over here to get a professional defensive tackle in this room, and that's what they did by getting Tomlinson. So now it's about supplementing that. The contracts have been a bit high, but if you look at what Hargrave got or Draymond Jones, Tomlinson's just that next tier down, so I think his salary is right with that. But I also think they paid to stop the bleeding. Enough was enough. Stop the madness. They paid the money to get the guy there, and so I think everything's going to follow suit. I think whoever they do supplement him with, I think will probably be one of those guys who's on a 1 to 2 year deal as opposed to what Tomlinson got with his 4.
Yeah, and the other thing was they were in on both Hargrave and Draymond Jones. And for whatever reason, the players chose the other, the 49ers and the Seahawks. And the Seahawks front-loaded the contract for Draymond Jones. Browns wanted to backload it. So, again, I don't argue with anybody who wants more money. Everybody wants to be paid more to do their job, so I don't argue with that. Dogs by Nature comes up 3 defensive tackles. The Browns should sign to add to Tomlinson to supplement. So they go with Morgan Fox, Greg Gaines, and Larry Ogunjobi, former Brown, Larry Ogunjobi. And you see Ogunjobi 70 pressures combined the last 2 seasons, so he's been pretty good. Who do you like to pair with Tomlinson? I'm still this guy might be a little bit redundant, but I still like A'Shawn Robinson, a guy maybe on a one-year small contract. Again, another guy that just plugs up the middle. The other thing that the big guys do is they keep your undersized linebackers free to run and make plays.
Yeah, that's the key. If I'm going off that list, I would probably pick Ogunjobi. I know what he can do from a pass rush perspective. He's a gap shooter as opposed to a gap eater. But I'm with you. If A'Shawn Robinson's on the table, let's go that route. I also like Sheldon Rankings and then someone like Jerry Tillery. I know who the Browns have been connected to in the past, and they put a claim in on him. But I do think that if you could get someone opposite of Thompson with a bit more length, I think that would add well, and I think that would be a good pair.
Yeah, the other thing I'm very curious to see is the development of Perrion Winfrey. Perrion Winfrey is a tackle that kind of penetrates, and you can afford that when you have a guy that he might be playing next to like a Dalvin Tomlinson.
Yeah, this could definitely open things up for Winfrey from a pass rush perspective because that's what he's going to be brought here to do. That's going to be his forte. And now that you kind of got that guy who can occupy blockers and free up linebackers, you're going to get Winfrey's going to get one-on-one matchups every single time, especially with Garrett out there. It's going to be up to him to take advantage of that. And we're just going to have to wait and see how serious he's taken being a professional during his first NFL offseason and what he's able to add to his pass rushing repertoire when they get here in August.
Do you expect another defensive tackle, be it a one-year veteran or I certainly expect him to get one more defensive lineman through free agency. Just your thoughts?
No, absolutely. I think they need to get another defensive tackle. Honestly, if I'm looking at the ones that were under contract, I don't know if they would consider bringing Taven Bryan back in a rotational pass rushing role. But I'm cool with cleaning house other than Winfrey, just to be honest. Go get another professional defensive tackle and let Winfrey grow and be a backup and just kind of be a supplement to those other two guys. That's what I'd like to see play out.
Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Take a look at some of the best fits of free agents still available for the Browns. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greeny Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop Live Theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at greenysportscards.com.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE with Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, how's it going? This is Don. I'm a Browns fan. I live outside of Pittsburgh. I want to talk about a couple of guys that were hurt last year that might be actually good additions to the team that would help out this year. Obviously Jakeem Grant, but the other kid is Isaiah Weston, and he's a big receiver. He's fast. He's got great measurables. Seemed like he was coming on last year during training camp. I'd like to know how he's coming along with his injury and if you guys think he could help the team. And one more player that I think we should kick the tires on is Josh Gordon and let him rebuild his reputation back in the place where he had incredible success. Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. We won't know much about Isaiah Weston, until they get into the rookie camps and those kind of things. He was an intriguing guy, a small college guy who kind of opened up some eyes. There were some parallels to Christian Watson, who got a slow start with Packers and then played really well. As far as Josh Gordon goes, I hope he gets another chance somewhere else. I don't know that I'd be interested in it here. And again, he is not a bad guy. I just don't know that this would be the best place for him or for the Browns.
Yeah, I would for Browns fans, just hold 2013 in your heart. Just hold that moment with Josh Gordon, because that's what it's going to be, just that little moment. Everything else, kind of let go and let him take his own journey from here. With Weston, he opened my eyes at the Combine last year. His size and athleticism, his speed, that's something that's coveted. he was just, too old, frankly, to be drafted, especially by the Browns. But the fact they were able to get him as an undrafted free agent, bring him in, I was very encouraged by. And the injury is unfortunate, and he's a total wild card. We don't know how he's going to respond from the injury. We know he has the measurables. Wasn't really a nuanced route runner. He'd have to add some things to his arsenal. But if he's able to get it together, and that would add something to this wide receiver room that, frankly, they don't have. And it would save a lot of money if he could do that. But it's a total wild card. We're not going to know until July and August and see how he's looking.
Yeah, and again, they'll monitor it, and they'll certainly give him every opportunity to earn some playing time without question. All right, this from Clutch Points. 4 best players to target during the rest of free agency for the Browns. The number 1 guy to go is a linebacker, Azeez Al-Shaair, and he is reportedly close to agreeing to terms with the Titans, so that one might be off the table. Number 2 is a tight end, Foster Moreau. Played really well when given the opportunity with the Raiders when Waller was banged up. Number 3, offensive lineman Andre Dillard. Was a left tackle for a little bit, is getting a little bit up in age, so it'll be interesting to see. And then number 4 is Mecole Hardman, wide receiver for the Chiefs. And we've talked about him a little bit. Of all those, Hardman's the most intriguing for me. I don't know that you necessarily go out and get a tight end or a lineman in free agency. I could certainly see drafting them, but I think the wide receiver position needs some upgrading.
Yeah, Moreau's a fine tight end. Just now that Vegas has traded Waller, I can see a path to him in back in Vegas. But I'm with you. If you look at that list, it's Mecole Hardman. He would definitely fit in really well with what Watson does, and just give this offense something that it doesn't currently have. He's dynamic. He's got great long speed. He can play an intermediate game. He can do the gadget stuff. He's a speedster that the defense has to account for. What's he going to demand as far as a contract? I think that's what it all comes down to with someone like Hardman. And we'll see how it plays out over the next few days. But if he's still hanging around, and you can get him on a team-friendly deal, that's someone they should jump at.
Yeah, I would agree. All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
How you doing? This is a long-time Browns fan, Tony Frost from Toledo, Ohio. Some are talking about trading Wyatt Teller and, other players on the offensive line. It seems to me that some people think that we don't need the same line for Deshaun Watson that we need for Baker Mayfield. Watson, I guess he doesn't need as much as Baker did. But Watson is an elite quarterback, and he's proved that. And so it's still important for us to have an elite line for Watson, because that way we can become an elite offense. I mean, I know Watson can create things that Baker couldn't, but why get rid of the top-tier linemen because we think that our quarterback, can compensate for those things that we're missing on the offensive line?
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Casey, I don't know that you don't think the line needs to be as good. What I would say is you're paying, if you pick up Jed Will's 5th-year option, you're paying 4 of those guys double-digit millions. That isn't sustainable. And the other thing that I would say, you want to give a quarterback like Deshaun Watson as many weapons to threaten the defense. So that's why you want to upgrade the receiving core, and you're going to have to, it's not a matter of decreasing the line, it's a matter of you can't pay $50, $60 million for your offensive line, which is the neighborhood they're in.
Yeah, I think the reason you're hearing Teller's name is because they think there's value, something they could get back for him. And then it's conversely, not so much that Watson can make up for that lack of elite offensive lineman, is that you have Bill Callahan on staff, and he could coach someone up and take that place to at least play at an adequate level. But this team has shown us that they're going to invest in the trenches, and they're not going to blow it up until they have to. Now, there's going to come a time where they're going to have to. Like you said, they can't afford to pay $10 million across the line. But, just what they did yesterday, re-signing Pochich, they've shown us that they're going to keep this thing going as long as they can. But eventually there's going to be a tipping point to where they're going to have to invest in other positions and take away from that offensive line. I think they can only just hope that Bill Callahan's still on staff the day they decide to do that.
Yeah, and the other thing that I think is critical, give Deshaun Watson some weapons to catch the football. You're going to throw the ball a lot. And I've got nothing against Cooper. I've got nothing against Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think David Bella has a space there. But you got to give him another weapon or two.
Well, wide receiver core is like a basketball team, basically. You need a point guard. You need a shooting guard. You need all these different skill sets kind of come together to give you a complete arsenal. And right now, they don't have that point guard guy. They just don't. You know, you can always hope that someone grows into a role. But if you can go out there and get someone who's, you know, shifty and can win one-on-one matchups early and win in the slot and be versatile, then you owe it to yourself to do that. You went and invested in your quarterback. Now you got to go get him all the things he needs to be successful.
Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason and also take a look at 5 players the Browns should still sign that are free agents. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
The Great Lakes Collectors Convention, presented by Greeny Sports Cards, takes over the Fieldhouse in Independence, Ohio, where the passions of sports fans, collectors, and sports talk enthusiasts collide. 50,000 square feet of ball card bliss. Hundreds of display tables. Card Shop Live Theater with interactive appearances from the region's most notable sports media. Great cards, great location, great show. Tickets on sale now at greenysportscards.com.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from Dawg Pound Daily. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
I was looking at some wide receivers in the draft, and Marvin Mims is just a phenomenal wide receiver. I think, in my opinion, he's one of the best receivers in this draft. And he's also a great route runner, and he can also make incredible catches. So I think that if he's there at 42, I think we should draft him. And if not, I think we could address our needs at D tackle. But in my opinion, I just really do think that Marvin would be a phenomenal wide receiver alongside with Cooper. I really do think that would be a great choice at 42 if he's there.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Casey, your thoughts on Marvin Mims?
I like Mims' game a great deal. You know, he's got speed, he's a good route runner, really good hands. I'm just not convinced the Browns are going to go wide receiver at 42. When I look at this draft, I see more value in like the 3rd and 4th round receivers. If you're not going to get someone at that very top, I think the best value is going to come the end of day 2, beginning of day 3. And that's where I would see the Browns investing in that position. I think they're going to look more to the defensive line with that first pick.
Yeah, and again, that's kind of the MO that they do. You sign some free agents that fill immediate needs, then you get a guy that you can develop. If he can come in and play right away, great. If it takes him a year, that's okay too. Let's take a look at this. This is from Dawg Pound Daily. 5 players the Browns should still sign, and we'll group a couple of them together. We got Jerick McKinnon, a running back, can catch the ball, was effective with the Chiefs. Wide receiver, Paris Campbell, kind of a speed guy, really good last season with the Indianapolis Colts, has kind of upped his game a little bit. So those are 2 of the offensive ones. Any thoughts on McKinnon and Campbell?
I love McKinnon's skill set, but kind of just similar to the last thing we talked about. I do think that if you look at this draft as a whole, the non-premium positions are deep, including running back. I think that's near the top of the list. I think they can get a guy on the cheap, day 3, who kind of has that same skill set that you're not going to have to pay for like you will with McKinnon. Paris Campbell's, I love his game. I like the pieces of it. But I always get leery when a player underperforms from the beginning of his career and then has a good year going into a contract. I've been that way ever since Albert Haynesworth. I've kind of always been guarded like that. So I stay leery of a player like Campbell, who just now really just put it together, and he's going to get a big contract. You know, how they're going to handle that. So I probably would stay away from Campbell. Although if they made the move, you can obviously see why they would do it. That 4.3 speed, that's and we saw it in action finally, something that can be applied at the NFL level.
Yeah, and again, an Akron native, went to St. Vincent St. Mary High School, was actually a running back, and he's young for his age group, which I remember. He graduated from high school when he was like 16. So he's a young guy with 4 years in the league. All right, let's take a look at three more. These are all defenders. Safety, Juan Thornhill, played for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then a couple of Eagles. Defensive tackle Fletcher Cox and defensive back C.J. Gardner-Johnson, who played safety, can play some corner. If Fletcher Cox is there at a reasonable price, that one intrigues me a lot because of his history with Jim Schwartz.
Yeah, if you could get Fletcher Cox on a 1 to 2 year team-friendly deal, I think that'd be a huge addition. And the way Schwartz approaches this is going to be a rotation thing, so you're not going to have to rely on Cox to play a crazy amount of snaps. But it's kind of an overlapping skill set with what Tomlinson does. So, how much do you want to invest in that type of defensive tackle, we'll see. But your team doesn't get worse by signing Fletcher Cox, especially in the run game department. If you could have two guys up there that could man up and just take away the middle of the field, you got to, if you have a chance, you need to do that.
So let me ask you this. We're in day 2 of legalized tampering. League year starts tomorrow. Who, if Andrew Berry signed this guy or this guy and this guy, who would you say, man, they did a really good job and addressed some needs in free agency? Who's a name or two that you think kind of complete the puzzle here?
I like Sheldon Rankins a great deal. I think that he'd be a perfect, someone to pair up with Dalvin Tomlinson, and I think that would really cement the middle of this defensive line. But there's still quality out there. You kind of let the names take care of themselves. They're going to be that first wave. It's that second wave where you get value in free agency, and that's where you can really build your team if you're going to do it through free agency. A lot of these guys who get these big bags right off the rip, it's going to be hard for those guys to live up to those numbers, And I think that here in the next week, you're going to see a lot of quality guys go for a little cheaper. And I think that's where Andrew Berry can really make some noise.
All right. You said you think they go defensive line. Who do you, if this guy is available at 42 or if they trade back at whatever they trade back to, who do you think kind of makes the most sense from what you have seen?
That's kind of how I gauge if they should trade back. If you get to 42 and Felix and Adike Uzoma's there, or BJ Ojolari or Adebawore, you stay and you take that player. But if they're not there, I think that's where you do see them trade back, because you have to keep in mind they only have a handful of picks next year. Somewhere in this draft, they're going to trade back and try to recoup something, so they're not going into next year with just bare bone draft picks. That's not how this front office operates. So, I wouldn't be surprised if they trade back. But if one of those 3 defensive line players are there, they have to take them.
All right, and you've already said you think that later in the draft makes sense for wide receivers. Some names you like that could be on the Browns' radar in the later rounds.
You look at the end of the 3rd round, beginning of the 4th round, I think you're looking at someone like Jaden Reed out of Michigan State. Super fast, can play in the slot. I'm going to continue to bang the table for Puka Nacua, even though for some reason I have this feeling he's going to be a San Francisco 49er. He just seems to do everything that Debo does, and I think they would just re-up that guy. But Andre Osivas is another guy who's going to be available right there. The crazy good skill set, athleticism. He's going to have to be more of a project guy, but you can work with that kind of clay. That's something that could have elite ramifications down the line. But those are 3 receivers I would keep my name on.
Mostly speed guys. Is that what you're kind of getting at as well?
Yep, that's what this team needs. They need some youth and some speed in that wide receiver room. That's also going to push these guys that are already on the roster. If that pushes them out, so be it. But that's what needs to happen now. They have to get as much speed and talent at that position as they can, because if this thing's going to reach its ceiling, it's going to be done through the passing game, and you need to give Watson more to work with.
Agree with you wholeheartedly. Casey Kinnamon, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Hey, anytime. Thanks for having me.
All right, Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out. Dawg Pound Daily, always really good stuff. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4. Remember, NFL league year starts at 4 p.m. tomorrow. Some of the terms that have been agreed to can become official with contracts. Have a great night, everybody. We will see you tomorrow at 4 on Sports4CLE.